one.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee. I'm here with my colleague, Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez, and we are here with the Planning Department for what I am very excited about, the Neighborhood Change in Montgomery County presentation, which is a very detailed study that goes into some of the dynamics that we have been discussing related to growth and the impact of growth, into change and the impact of change, and what it means for the demographics of the county, and how we stack up, so to speak, and compare to regional counterparts, as well as the broader conversation about how change impacts communities and what the result is. So very excited to have this presentation here, and really just want to express my gratitude and appreciation for all the work. I'll turn it over to my colleague if she has any initial remarks, which she's saying she does not. And so I will turn it over to you with the Planning Department, and we can go through the presentation and then ask any questions or make any comments once you're through.
Good afternoon, Tanya Stern, Acting Director with the Montgomery County Planning Department. Again, we very much appreciate this opportunity to brief the PHP Committee on this very important analysis that our Research and Strategic Projects Division completed. I wanted to just share just very briefly that this analysis looking at neighborhood change across the region, including Montgomery County, is part of our equity agenda for planning by the Planning Department, which is our very sort of multi-strategy initiative that we have to ensure that equity is a foundational part of our work. And as part of that, our research team has done a lot of data analysis, very innovative data analysis, as well as created a number of data tools to help really pull out and pull apart a number of these issues so that we can have a much better understanding of equity issues within our county. And this analysis, as Mr. Kraft, as he goes through the presentation, you'll be able to see a lot of the really fascinating and very, in some cases, probably unexpected results from this analysis. And so again, we just really appreciate this opportunity to provide this briefing, and happy to answer any questions. And with that, I will turn it over to the team.
Okay, thanks. So for the record, Ben Kraft, a research planner with Research and Strategic Projects here in the Planning Department. And so yeah, I'll jump into it here. And it's a scroll, huh? Okay. So yeah, just to, as Director Stern mentioned, this project is actually about 1.5 years old by now. It's part of our equity agenda for planning, and it's been I've presented it to numerous places, the Planning Board a few times. It's been covered in the Washington Business Journal, and it's actually, it was mentioned in Thrive 2050's Racial Equity and Social Justice chapter. So it's been out there. I think you guys are at least somewhat familiar with it. But I'm really glad to be able to, for the first time, come here to the council to present it. I always start with the main takeaways, because there's a lot in here, and it's good to kind of just know what's coming up as we go. So I think what has increasingly become the main takeaway as I kind of keep revisiting this is just this idea that neighborhoods can get wealthier, higher income, more prosperous, and more socioeconomically diverse at the same time. This is a possible thing, even though we kind of tend to think it's either one or the other. But the way for that to happen, and the way it has happened in our region and elsewhere, is through growth. It has to be, you have to make room for more people for that to preserve and grow that diversity as the socioeconomic status of people overall in a neighborhood change. So the other and related main takeaway is just this idea that poverty concentration and displacement, sometimes called gentrification, and I typically just call it displacement here, are really both two sides of the same coin. They're what happens when neighborhoods get more socioeconomically homogenous. And in Montgomery County, but they are real problems. And in Montgomery County, though, even though a lot of the focus tends to be on displacement, and for good reason, as we'll see in a lot of places, Montgomery County's main problem is actually the poverty or low-income concentration. We have quantitatively more places and more people that are affected by that than we do than by displacement, although it is a problem in the region. So finally, building more housing is really the key, not the only thing, but a very important key to avoiding both of these problems with either poverty concentration on the one hand or displacement on the other hand, because what it allows neighborhoods to do is grow more socioeconomically diverse. And then just finally, I think what I think all this is saying is that basically building more housing, which is often kind of equated with being bringing on displacement or gentrification, it's been, I think that's been in a lot of studies shown not to be the case. I just want to add as an addendum here, just statistically, the correlations don't bear out with looking at neighborhood change and the changing populations of Black and Hispanic populations in the region. Where we build more housing, they either tend to grow or there is no relationship. So I'll get to that as we move on later in the presentation. So very briefly, this study, it's not, we did not create this. We really borrowed or stole the methodology from a University of Minnesota study that had been done a few years earlier. We updated the data a little bit. The data it goes from 2000 to 2019. The original one only went to 2016, and we made a few other kind of methodological updates and changes that I won't get into. But we added the housing and the race and ethnicity dimension into this study that the original one didn't have. We got generally the same, or I shouldn't even say generally, really the exact same results that they did. It didn't change much based on the methodology changes. The same overall conclusions are the same, are what they got, and which really meaning that poverty concentration does nationwide, I'm talking about, this is what the University of Minnesota study showed, that really is a much more widespread problem than either thought, and especially that's thought in the popular consciousness, and more widespread than displacement. Displacement is really limited to a handful of very economically vibrant large cities. That's where we see all the media stories for good reason, because it's happening there. But the larger story throughout the country, especially in the suburbs and other places, is really just this idea of increasing poverty concentration. So that's one of their main takeaways. Same holds here. So this is the bit of the presentation that gets kind of technical and a little bit abstract, so it takes a lot of concentration, but we'll try to, and a lot of explaining, but I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. So there's two populations here that the study, the framework breaks every population, every neighborhood into two populations. You're either low income or you are middle high income. You must be in either one of those. And the threshold is 2 times the federal poverty level. So if you're below that, you're low income. If you're above that, you're middle high income. And that is based on, now we use that because that accounts for family size. So it's not just, looking just at your income. You could have, if you have, 6 children, an income does not go nearly as far as if you have no children. So that's what this does. For reference, it's still, this is the 2 times the federal poverty level is the best, is the highest cutoff that this data provides, although it's still very low. So it's still, you can be at this level, you're not considered, poor in poverty. I use the terms interchangeably because it's about, and in the last few years, anywhere from about $50,000 to like $53,000 a year for a family of 4. So it's, it's below our area median income. It's it's far below that actually. And it's really, if you're in Montgomery County or the DMV region, you're really struggling if you're living on that. So even while we say middle high income, even just slightly below that isn't necessarily, like you're really, wealthy. It's just, that's the best cutoff we have. And so we use the for the year, it's a cross-sectional study. It looks at what was in the neighborhoods in the year 2000 using the decennial census, and then looks at how that each neighborhood changed up to 2019 using the American Community Survey. And really what that last data point is it's the 5-year American Community Survey. So it's basically a rolling average of everything that's happening from 2019 in the 5 years before it. So it's not exactly a 2019 cutoff, but that's the way I say it just for ease. So the way that the neighborhood change in this study is conceptualized is just this idea of the way. Well, you can think of it in, I guess, these 4 different cells in this 2x2 grid, where you have on the if you look across the top, you have the tract is, I believe, I can't quite, okay, I have to look over here. Tract is gaining, so across the top, yeah, thanks, just very, it's what's happening to the low-income people. So you have on the top left, you have a tract gaining low-income people. On the top right, you have a tract losing low-income people. And then on the other axis, you have what's happening to the middle-high-income people. So on the top left, you have a tract gaining middle-high-income people. On the bottom left, for example, you'd have a tract losing middle-high-income people. And so you can just kind of go, pick your cell and see what's happening in there, where the tract, so like, for example, the top right, where you have a tract both gaining middle-high income people but losing low-income people, that's where you have displacement. Then kind of catty corner to that, which is kind of the flip side of that, where you have a tract that's losing middle-high income people, but, it's losing middle-high income people and also gaining low-income people. And that's where you have, it's getting increasingly low income. And finally, the top left, which is the green, that's inclusive growth. That's this growth that we're hoping to have. That's, the more socioeconomic kind. You're getting wealthier and you're getting more diverse, which is where you have both middle high income and low income people gaining. And, if you just kind of think about the math, if you have to be one of or the other, you're classified as one or the other, the only way to do that is through increasing the population, basically. Finally, the bottom right is when you're losing both groups, the neighborhood's emptying out. That is not something that has registered in our county yet or in our region. It does happen quite a bit in the Rust Belt, in the rural South, where neighborhoods really are just emptying out, just losing people. Yeah, Baltimore, there are some instances of this in Baltimore, but we don't have that yet in our region, or at least during the time of this study. So, yeah, I might need this here. Thanks. So these are the thresholds for how to whether a neighborhood is in one of these categories or not. So if you look, the first cutoff or the first point criterion is this idea of the percent change in the number of middle high income people. If you, for example, like if you're looking at the top two, the top two, abandonment and low income concentration, you're losing middle high income people in this case. And to meet the criteria, you have to a tract would have to lose at least 10% of its middle high income, or have a 10% change in a drop in middle high income population. So if you had, for example, if you started out with 100 middle high income people in that tract, you'd have to lose 10 of them, at least 10 of them throughout the study period to qualify to meet that criterion. Once a tract has done that, there's an additional criterion where you have to increase your share of low-income people by at least 5%. So if you're in 2000, if your share of low-income people was, let's say, 25%, by 2019 that would have to have had increased to 30% to meet that criterion. And then finally, so if you do both of those, then the last criterion is just really about the just absolute or net change in number of people. So if you've met both of those criterion and you've actually lost low-income people, that's when you're just losing people, that you're emptying out. That's when you hit the abandonment. But if you've done both of those and gained people, increased the population, then you're in the low-income concentration, or what I call poverty concentration category. Also, the differences in colors are we just took this from the original study. They didn't use the words moderate and strong, but they just had kind of like they cut it off at 700 people overall, where 1 to 699 is kind of just I guess, we're calling it moderate change, whereas if you've increased that net or increased or decreased in a net amount by over 700, we're calling that a very strong, that's a pretty significant change in a neighborhood. So looking at the displacement and inclusive growth, it's the same category, just the opposite, the opposite way, opposite things happening with the other population. And so these are pretty stringent categories. These are it's a significant change for a neighborhood to meet this. So neighborhoods will be changing all the time. They're just not going to, most of the time they're not going to have changed enough to meet these criteria. All right, so that was kind of like the toughest part, but now we just get into like the results here. And so you can see I'm breaking it down, each category, give it its own map here as we go through. And so if you see, I think I could have put animation on here, I guess, if I was better with PowerPoint, but if you really look at the change as you go from blue to red, which is displacement to poverty concentration, you can see geographically how the displacement really is concentrated for the most part in the center of the region, in DC and Arlington, while the poverty concentration is more kind of like just around a ring around the displacement. So that is a major trend in the region. The inclusive growth, it's rare. We'd like to see it more, we'd like to see more of it. But, there are some really noteworthy tracks, especially as we'll talk about Montgomery County. Our large transit-oriented downtowns. These are really the places where we're seeing in this county inclusive growth. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. Here's just a map with everything together. So this table sums up a lot about this study, and there's a lot here. So what it's showing, that the bar chart part of it on top is showing the percentage of tracks in each jurisdiction that are in each of the categories. So, and that also corresponds with just below them. That's just the number of tracks in each category in the same jurisdiction. So it's just a table right below, the same jurisdiction. So it's number versus percentage. And really the overall trend that this demonstrates is that on the left side, where you have Prince George's and Montgomery counties, we have more of these poverty concentration tracks than we do displacement tracks. And then as you move farther on, Fairfax is pretty close, although it has more displacement tracks. But then when you get to Washington, D.C., Arlington, and Alexandria, you have way more displacement tracks than you have poverty concentration. So that's really where you've got, a lot of displacement happening. But when you get out to, the suburbs, you've got this poverty concentration problem. And also, as you can see at the bottom, across the bottom of the table, that's just the number of total tracks. So by far, most of the tracks, again, are not in one of these categories. It doesn't mean they're not changing. Some of them were very close. You could loosen up the categories a little bit, and more would be in each category. But for this part, most of the neighborhoods are not changing enough to really fit one of the categories. All right, so this chart is really saying a very similar thing to what the last one said, but this one we're looking at people and the number of people affected, not the number of tracks. So it's really the same story. If you look at the region on the far left, if you look at the region without, not counting Montgomery and Prince George's County, I believe, you see, I think it's about 3-to-1 displacement to poverty concentration. That's people being affected over this time period. And then, of course, it's the opposite once you look at Montgomery County specifically, and it's a little bit more severe poverty concentration to displacement in Prince George's County. So that's regionally how this is going. Thanks. Then if we look at add race and ethnicity into this, and we just look at on the top, we've got Montgomery County, and on the bottom, the chart is for the DC region without Montgomery County. You can see the number of both Black and Latino residents living in each category, and this is it's both who was living there in 2000 and then who's still there in 2019. And so you can see, again, you've got really the opposite relationship going on, where in Montgomery County, in both years, you've got a higher percentage of Black and Latino people living in tracts that are affected by poverty concentration than you do displacement. When you look at the region, not counting Montgomery County, it's the opposite relationship, where you have a lot more Black people and Latino people living in these neighborhoods that are affected by displacement. So you've got kind of just opposite trends going on there across the region. Thanks for bringing this, Gary. So this chart is looking at the net changes in over the time period of the different racial and ethnic groups. And so when you look at the region, it's a fairly, I guess, much more classic, or what you would expect kind of pattern, because you have in the low-income concentration groups, you have what you can see as white people leaving. This is on the left chart. You've got a little bit of a net increase in Black or in the Black population, a fairly large increase in the Latino population. When you move to the next category and you look at displacement, you have an influx of white people. You have a reduction, or Black people leaving those tracks, and then you have you do have an influx of Latino people. One of the things about this, if you'll notice, the Latino bar is positive in every single category, because we just had a very large increase in the Latino population, and so Latino people have basically moved into every kind of tract, regardless of what its category is, but they still are disproportionately in poverty concentration tracts, especially in our region. So the two can be true at the same time. But so in any event, once you move over to the inclusive growth, as we would expect, you've got all people moving in. Although in the region, if you look at the region as a whole without Montgomery County, you still have a lot more white people than you do of people, Black and Latino, comparatively moving into the inclusive growth tracts. When you look at the same chart for Montgomery County, it's similar in the low-income concentration, where you have, but although, as I was saying, the bar for the Latino population is much higher, relative to the rest of the populations. There's just been a large influx in those poverty concentration tracts, and again, the bar for the Black population is higher than it is in relative terms to the region. So you really have, so that's a little bit of a difference. And then when you look at the displacement, you really have and this is why displacements you really have to think about how you use the term, because there's really the largest population, that kind of net growth in population in these tracts is the Latino population, of small growth in white population, and just a small drop in the Black population. But then once again, when you get to inclusive growth, you have much more in the relative sense. The growth in all populations is a bit closer. Like if you put the Latino and the Black bar together, it's close to the growth of the white population. So it's kind of close. They're more on par. The growth is less disproportionate in Montgomery County, in between the types. So now this is where housing comes in. So what we did here was just take each of the categories and add up or look at how many tracts there were in each category, each of the neighborhood change categories, and then divide that by the new housing units that were in that category. So it's pretty simple, but what you can see when you do that is that even though there were a lot fewer in both places, a lot fewer inclusive growth tracts, whether you're in the DC region or Montgomery County, you've the number of new housing units per tract over this time period is just much higher, orders of magnitude higher than any of the other categories. So it's like, I think it's 68 times as many more housing units per tract in Montgomery County and inclusive growth neighborhoods as there were added in the low-income or poverty concentration tracts. So really, there's definitely a relationship between this built housing being built and inclusive growth, and additionally, the low-income concentration tracts are where the least housing has been built. So probably that has something to do. Again, this isn't like causal research or anything, but it probably has something to do with like a cycle of disinvestment that's going on there. It becomes a certain level of poverty concentration, then it just becomes not a place that's viable for new development. So just focusing in on a couple of specific tracts for us in Montgomery County, this downtown Silver Spring census tract is one of the most notable, probably I would say the most notable in the whole study, because it's the only one in the whole region that showed up as this inclusive growth and also the strong category, like over 700 new, I think low-income, well, high-income people, middle high-income people in this case. So it really did grow a lot, and you can see, and it grew very inclusively, and you can see the difference between it and its neighbors that fall into other categories and just how much more had over 4,000 new units of housing. So it really is kind of on the extreme end of all this, and you can kind of see the effect that housing has. And I'll return to this one in just a second, but here's just a map of the overall region again, and I'll focus on a couple of these tracks in a bit, but just this shows you that mainly if you look at the green areas, it's hard to tell from this map, but there's a tiny little one in part of downtown Bethesda. There is downtown Rockville is a green area. There's the King Farm area. So a lot of these places where we've built a lot of housing in the last 20 years, and in some cases kind of like for all intents and purposes the only housing we've built in the last 20 years, these are the places that really are showing up as inclusive growth, and some of them actually have good transit access. There's also, actually I should say, I believe part of downtown Wheaton also is another one. So yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? The green area that you have between Aspen Hill and Silver Spring, I think that's Wheaton and Glenmont. And I was going to tell you that we lost, is bittersweeter news, because we lost in Glenmont the enterprise zone, and I'm working on 2 particular projects right now in that area. But we lost it because we have more people with money, and there's a whole bunch of townhouses that I approved when I was on the planning board with people with more income living there. So it's great, but it sucks because we lost the enterprise zone. So that's that area, right? Probably, yeah.
So you can. I just looking at a couple of the tracks. You can, if you, yeah, I could. You can just see like how the metrics work. How the actual population is changing in each of the categories and how that's related to housing. So like, for example, the tract where the Lake Forest Mall was is really one of the most significant or serious kind of poverty concentration areas in the county. They've over this period they've had they've lost over 22% of their middle high income population. So that's a pretty significant, flight out of there. And at the same time, their share of low income people has increased by, over a quarter. So that's really, that's just a really significant change. And, they've had, according to census, the housing units are just, Census American Community Survey counts. So it's not like development, data or anything, but it's showing that they've got only 36 new units, a net gain of 36 units in 20 years. So, so that's just really shows you how, how those, and then you can see again, downtown Silver Springs, really, really significant growth in basically all categories, adding low-income people, but reducing the share of low-income people. So that, it doesn't have to do that with inclusive growth, but that's part of it. So finally, just to focus in once again on downtown Silver Spring, another one of the really interesting things and really inclusive things about that is that during the time that it added all these units and added all this population, it actually continued and got wealthier. It actually added more. I shouldn't say it didn't. It added just about as many Black residents as it did white residents. And it continues to have more Black residents, and obviously if you add up, basically more people of color than it does white residents, even though it added over 2,200 white residents. So I've not compared that to any other place. I think that's probably pretty rare and unique. I doubt many other places can say that they've done that, but that's kind of shows you what inclusive growth can look like, and I think Silver Spring's a great example. So finally, just that this is that. Where we did a statistical, just a correlation, nothing complex here, but just to get at this idea of if you build housing, does that displace Black or Latino people? across the board, statistically, in general, no, it doesn't. What this is saying is that this one we're showing you just in Montgomery County, there is it's actually a positive relationship. So change in housing is positively related to both Black and Latino residents. It's just quite under statistical significance for the Latino population. So in that case, it's basically, you can just kind of say at best, there's no relationship between housing. It's like the null hypothesis, but so really you just can't, there is not a negative relationship. And then if you go to if you look at the region overall, and this is also throwing out the outliers, by the way, like basically all the big inclusive growth tracks, this doesn't even have them in the analysis because they're such outliers. But, same thing with Black and Latino residents around the region, which is just that the relationship between housing and change in population is positive and statistically significant in both cases here. Couple final things, but this is just kind of I put this in, it's the inverse of really what we've been showing all along. This is looking at tracks that, for the most part, or like what's really staying the same across the county, because neighborhood change, it's actually very few tracks fit into one of the counties or one of the categories. So if we look at if we kind of want to get a better picture for the other tracks, I just looked at which tracks stayed above the 60th percentile in overall per capita income regionally, which tracks stayed between the 40th and 60th. So those would be tracks that kind of maintained, I guess, kind of generally middle class status, and then those tracks that stayed below the 40th percentile of per capita income, because when we do neighborhood change and we see increasing poverty concentration, what we miss are the tracks that already got there, and they're just they haven't changed enough to fit a neighborhood change, but they still require attention because there might be ongoing, poverty concentration. And so you can just see that a lot of the region really is in one of these categories in this sense that just there hasn't been much change. There hasn't been much, the white categories, the ones that aren't, or the white tracks, the ones that really aren't symbolized here, are the ones that have actually have moved between these categories. So most of the tracks are staying the same, and these orange tracks you can see are the ones that stayed above the 60th percentile. So really, in a sense, they're kind of they've been there, they're not changing, and they're just kind of maintaining the exclusivity. But that's also part of the neighborhood change equation. It's not just tracks that are changing, it's also tracks that are staying the same, but not making any room for anybody else that really is, needs to be understood before you can understand what's happening with the change. So that's kind of what's going on there. And then related to that, this is just to show what's looking at the region and how many tracks are in a neighborhood change category. And like I said, most of the census tracts or neighborhoods in the region are not in a category. That is different when you get to DC, where the majority of their tracks, 57%, are actually in any of the categories. So there's a lot of change going on, at least in the last 20 years. There's been a lot of change going on there. And all the other parts of the region, there's a lot less change, but really the kind of the epicenter that's driving a lot of it is, it's no surprise that it's kind of the economic center of our region, but that's really driving a lot of the change. And then to a lesser extent, about a third of the tracks in Arlington and Alexandria are seeing the change. So that's really kind of where the change, the quantitatively speaking, is kind of emanating from. So yeah, to finish off, I know that was a lot of data, but really I think what it boils down to is that building more housing, and of course a lot of this has to do with affordable housing, like our MPDU program, which we is, I think, creates a lot more affordable units than the other places in the region, at least so far, that makes space for more people, that increases socioeconomic diversity, and which also prevents poverty concentration and displacement, and then that is what makes inclusive growth possible. So I think, and all of this, of course, is on our website. There's an interactive map, and hopefully you've seen that already. So.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Anything else to add from planning?
I think the punchline is that we need more housing in this region for a lot of reasons, and this certainly will help to further socioeconomic diversity within our county and within our region. in addition to just making sure that residents have the ability to have a home that they can afford to live in. I think this analysis really helps to drive home that need.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think for many, many years, we have had a yes, but strategy, and we need a yes, and strategy. That it is true that displacement is something that we should be thinking about, but if you look at the data, concentration of poverty, disinvestment, chronic disinvestment in particular areas, the stasis of particular areas is a much more significant issue. It's not to say that we shouldn't continue to be mindful of issues, but we need to focus on what the key challenges are that are denying access to opportunities that are hurting our equity and inclusionary goals more than others. And, to me, the constant conversation about housing and about land use in general is this discussion of a zero-sum game where if something is happening, somebody has to be winning and somebody has to be losing, that there's a equal and opposite reaction, that every positive thing has an equal and opposite negative response. And this presentation demonstrates that that's not necessarily true, that you can, if you do it in a thoughtful way, a rising tide can lift all boats, as we see in certain parts of our community. But it also reflects that there are a lot of areas where we're not seeing the level of dynamism and change that we need. And so finding that right balance is tough, but I think getting out of this tired old conversation of yes but instead of yes and of the zero-sum game of who wins and who loses, as opposed to how do we come up with thoughtful strategies like the MPDU policy, like inclusionary zoning, where everybody can win or most people can win, or we can try to provide access and opportunity to as many people as we possibly can. And so I, hopeful that we can continue to do this. I think this gives us a framework to look at these issues. My main question here is, where do we go from here? Obviously, this is a basis of a theoretical thought that, somewhat scientific confirmation of the direction in which planning has gone. And as you mentioned, this has been presented before. It's part of the overarching land use policy and strategy of the planning department and of the county. But are we going to regularly look at this map? Are we going to change what it looks like? Is this a moment in time snapshot, or is this intended to be every certain number of years we're going to map this out and see, is it getting better, is it getting worse? Is it staying the same?
I will start and would like to have the research team also chime in. This was certainly an opportunity for us to apply this methodology that has already been done for the U.S. to see what we can find out about Montgomery County and the region. And I remember when, Ben started working on this, we didn't know what the outcome was going to be. I think now that we've done this analysis, now that we have this data, it does give us the opportunity to think about, how and when do we go back and revisit this? I don't think we have a sort of a defined time frame at this point. Again, this is just completed in the last year and a half, but it is something that we should certainly think about. I think it's also important to, think about that we have this analysis that works hand in hand with our other equity tools, data analysis tools that we've developed as part of our equity agenda, and these sort of work as layers, so to speak. So we have our equity focus areas mapping, which we've used a number of times in our master plans, and other agencies have used them or use a version of them. We also have our community equity index, which is our most recent tool that we would like to be able to brief the council on at some time in the future. And we've used this data as part of our master plan. So when we are doing a sector plan, for instance, now that we have this analysis, Fairland is a good example. Right, they use it in Fairland Brooks Cheney master plan, which is, wrapping up the council review process now. We can identify, which of these categories the tracks in a particular area in a county falls within, and that becomes another layer that we can apply as part of our equity lens to think about, if it's in an area that has a low-income concentration, then we need to be particularly mindful of recommendations that can help address that and can support socioeconomic diversity. So I think we are sort of learning as we are going along now that we have these tools, but we are really thinking about how can we make sure that they all work together and can help to really kind of unveil, so to speak, some additional ways, additional lenses and ideas for other recommendations sort of beyond what we may have done in the past. And I think, as, Chair Friesen noted, the story from this, which is that gentrification and displacement are actually not the dominant trends in the county, really are surprising. It was surprising to me. I'm from DC. I've lived and worked in different parts of this region, so I'm very cognizant, have seen that happen in DC and other parts of the area. And I agree that it's sort of the dominant conversation. But now that we have this data, this is another way for us to really look at what's actually happening and go beyond sort of anecdotal understanding of different dynamics. And that way we can make much better informed decisions, policy decisions, public investment decisions, because we have more of the data to help unveil what's actually happening.
Appreciate that. A couple more comments, questions, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague. Have you briefed or shared with Office of Legislative Oversight this data and this presentation?
I don't. I'm trying to think about the presentations. I don't think we actually have showed this to them. No.
Yeah, I would suggest it because they are, very involved in the way in which we are viewing zoning text amendments and legislation, and I think this is really helpful. It's a core part of your equity strategy, and it would be helpful for their awareness of that. So I would encourage you proactively to do that, to share with them, to offer to do the presentation for OLO, particularly those who are involved in doing some of the zoning text amendment and other issues. I would, certainly reach out to them, Ms. Bonner Tompkins and others in OLO, Mr. Seelar. So, strongly encourage that. I'd also, appreciate it. I'd also encourage, I don't know what the year is, or the timing is, but I don't know if it's every 3 years, every 5 years, but we should analyze this. And I don't think this should be a study that's a point in time study, because it is the study of stasis versus change and the impact of stasis versus change. And in order to really understand what's happening, we can't be static, in the analysis. So, I would ask that you think through what that looks like, come up with a time frame that's reasonable within the work plan. It would seem to me that most of the work has been done. It's inputting new data, but decide what you think would be meaningful and helpful to tell the story of what's actually happening. I mean, sometimes if you're looking at too tight a window, it's not really telling enough. You're the experts, so let us know. But if you could share that with the committee, I think that would be helpful.
And just to add, it has to be a 5-year update because it's 5-year ACS data. So until
Perfect. The community survey is 5 years
outside of 2019.
That's why you're the expert and I'm not. That makes sense. The American Community Survey comes out every 5 years, so we'll base it off of that.
It comes out every year, but it's each one is a rolling 5-year average of this previous 5 years. So to completely separate.
You want new, clean data. You want clean data.
The last year.
So that you're not spoiling the data with other data that you've already looked at.
Exactly.
So if you're looking at change, you need clean data, so to speak.
Yeah,
so you need a full cycle out to get a full cycle. Okay. Got it. I think every 5 years makes sense. If you could think through, operationalizing that and just get back to us on how you plan to do that. The other thing that I was thinking about, and I don't really know exactly how you would do this, but thinking through what, if any, impact there is on the timing of the completion of master plans to the change. So, we just finished, Silver Spring, Adjacent Communities Plan. Is it within 5 years or 10 years of a plan you see change in the last, 10 or 20 or 30 years before it's done, you don't? Is it that you actually see it in years, 10 through 15? I would just to give a little bit of thought to, obviously it takes some time to implement master plans. Some take longer than others. Some never really get implemented to the extent that we would like. But I think it would be helpful to see, like, once we make relatively, I mean, to me, that's a proxy for when we're making a localized, fairly large-scale zoning changes, and what impact does that have, if any? And if the answer is it has an impact, but only in these type of areas and these type of circumstances, it doesn't have an impact, I think that would be interesting to think about. We don't have to talk about it today, but I think coming back and thinking about that, because that is the primary tool that we use to make zoning changes, and this is essentially a study of how changes in communities work and who they impact and how they impact and what is the net change as a result. And so really thinking through, what that looks like, I think would be helpful. It doesn't have to happen immediately, but maybe even in the next 5-year look at this, that's a layered piece on top, or just something to give some thought to. So appreciate that. Let me turn it over to the former vice chair of the planning board, Councilmember Flanagan-Gonzalez.
Thank you. Oops. I think this data shows, once again, that more housing means more racial equity and social justice, period. And I strongly encourage you to start using social media or your communications tool to put the message out there, because this is coming from data, not a narrative, not, I think this is what's happening. No, this is based on data. And it should be out there in a way that is very clear and easy to digest, meaning very few sentences. So that's one. And it's great timing because we're about to approve the Fairland Briggs Cheney plan, and we're increasing density there. Some folks don't agree, but I think the data speaks clearly that having more density in that part of the county, it actually is great for racial equity and social justice, not concentrating poverty, and it just gives more opportunity for folks who are higher income to live there. It's a good thing. And this is not a new concept. We're talking about this for years, at least when I was on the planning board, that we do not want to concentrate poverty anywhere. And when we bring density, more housing in particular neighborhoods that have been neglected, it's a great thing. I look forward to using this data in your upcoming University Boulevard Corridor sector plan, which is in my district. I'm so excited about it, and we got to talk about this and have people understand that building more housing, especially near transit, you didn't talk about transit here, but building more housing near transit is key. And so, yeah, that's my takeaway. Please use the data with your comms team. So that's it. Thank you.
Happy to do so. And I just wanted to mention something really briefly as a follow-up to the previous point in terms of how does this analysis and sort of the timing of when changes that are done through master plans, when they actually start to show up. Just internally, we've been working on doing master plan reality checks. We've been doing those periodically. We had a meeting recently on the latest one that was just completed for one of our older master plans, and we will be briefing the planning board in the near future. And I think that is another opportunity for us to think about in terms of looking at those, what did we learn from doing those master plan reality checks of earlier, older master plans when we've seen, development or change happen, and just thinking through what are those plans and the implementation of those plans telling us about the timing. In some cases, in certain parts of the county, it's happening much more rapidly, say in downtown Bethesda. In other parts of the county, maybe not so much. But what can we learn about that, and how can we apply that understanding to thinking about, the timing of these changes?
Make sure that just because we talked about Glenmont and Wheaton, and it's one of your highlights here, there is growth happening in a place that people didn't expect it to happen. It's because also we have the red line there. But that's an area, not because I'm the district council member, but I think it's an area that deserves some reality check, especially with the 2 projects that I'm working on that are coming to the planning board very soon. So.
Great. Okay. Anything from council staff? Nothing from council staff. I'll just say on this, I first got a glimpse of the idea of what this study ultimately became when former Planning Board Chair Casey Anderson was talking about the early stages of the Silver Spring and Adjacent Communities Plan. And he started talking to me about looking into this question because Silver Spring, it seemed, as the early data was starting to reveal as the work was happening at the staff level related to Silver Spring, that inclusionary growth not only is possible, but it's happening. And it's particularly happening in Montgomery County in Silver Spring. And the question is, how do we build on that? How do we provide for the policies and the zoning changes that are necessary to take that and make it even more successful. And so it's great to see what came of the scientific follow-up to that initial assessment that the staff had undertaken, and just wanted to note and acknowledge that. And I think we should be talking about that. Montgomery County has before been a national leader in inclusionary growth and inclusionary zoning. We invented the concept of it, of moderately priced dwelling units, among others. We need to get back to that point, and I think we're moving in that direction, and I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do. But I think this both reveals that we have done really well in certain areas and that we have a lot of work to do in others. And I think that's the sobering reality, but also the real opportunity that this study presents to us. And it's data driven, and it is reflecting what's actually happening on the ground and the impact that has on people's lives, on families, on opportunities that we're creating for everybody in our community. So thank you for that work. Look forward to the follow-up and next steps, and to building on what you have done here. So really appreciate it. Thank you, and we are adjourned.